Hi folks, and welcome to this deck tech video for Mono Green Stompy. This is Jason Moore here with MTGOacademy.com, and I want to thank you guys for checking out this video. Please be sure to read the rest of the article and view the other videos, and at the very end leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the deck, of the gameplay, and of the article as a whole. It'd be a huge help for me. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this deck here. This is Mono Green Stompy, one of the premier aggressive decks in the Pauper format, and it's a deck I haven't played very much, so I have a bare bones level of understanding with the deck. It's going to play cheap threats. It's an aggressive build, an aggressive strategy, a lot of pump spells. It's a Rancor deck utilizing one of the best green spells in the format here. So we're going to start with the land base actually, which is 17 basic forests, and it's a very simple, straightforward land base. Everything comes into play untapped. A low land count. You'll see that the land counts tend to vary depending on what list you're looking at. Some of the decks play land grant in place of a number of forests, and with a card like Quirion Ranger and all the 1-drops we're playing, you can actually get away with only a couple lands on the battlefield, which can be pretty beneficial. We're going to be drawing a high density of spells and creature threats. We're playing 25 creatures in this particular list. So starting over on the left, we've got Quirion Ranger, and this is essentially going to do a couple things for us. It's going to generate mana by returning forests to our hand. We can replay those forests and cast additional spells. It's also going to allow us to trigger landfall for the pump spell Groundswell, which is a +4/+4 bonus when we do have that landfall triggered. So that can be very helpful. Sometimes you can give a creature a surprise block, and this also synergizes well with a card called Scattershot Archer, which we are not playing in this particular build, but is pretty popular in most of the Mono Green Stompy builds you're going to see. We've got 4 copies of Silhana Ledgewalker, a very evasive creature and has hexproof, so this is one of the most resilient creatures in the deck, one of the scariest, especially when we have a Hunger of the Howl pack with Morbid placed onto this, making it a 4/4 creature. That can be very scary, and obviously Rancor will do a lot of damage as well. This list that we're going to be piloting is playing 3 copies of Safehold Elite, and this is a Grizzly Bear with Persist, so it's essentially 2 creatures for the price of 1. You get a 2/2 body, and then you get a 1/1 body. So this is going to generate some card advantage for us, a little more resistant to removal spells, a little bit better in the red zone. 4 copies of Nettle Sentinel, aggressively costed, 2/2 creature for 1, and can untap. You can do some interesting tricks with a card like Gleeful Sabotage. You cast this with the Conspire, and it will actually untap after you've tapped it to use the Conspire ability. So this is a card that's always going to untap, essentially because we have so many cheap green spells that this guy will be untapping a lot in the early game. Pit Skulk, another evasive creature, and this one's evasive because its power, when pumped up with a pump spell or the Bloodthirst, allows it to go unblocked, and that's really significant. So he's not the best turn 1 play, but a fantastic turn 2 play after you've already bashed in with another 1-drop. 2 copies of Sheenan of Life's Roar, and this is a more niche effect. This will allow other creatures to go unblocked, or you can use it as a sort of removal spell because they will be blocking your Sheenan, and you can just pump it as much as you need to remove their guys. So it's pretty versatile in that respect, but we're only playing 2 just to draw it in the later game or as a way to give us a little bit better matchups against the creature decks or decks that want to be blocking our onslaught. 4 copies of Young Wolf, a cheaper Safehold Elite. It's the inverse of Safehold Elite. It gives us a 1/1 and then a 2/2. So this is in the deck for all the same reasons that Safehold Elite is, though we're only playing 3 copies of the Elite because it costs more. It costs 2 mana, and we want to keep this curve nice and low. A lot of 1-drops in this deck here. We've got 16 creatures, and then all of our spells, with the exception of a Kicked Vines, are 1 CMC as well. 3, Gather Courage. A lot of the times with the Convoke ability, this will be cast for free. So it's sort of like a mutagenic growth in that sense. Can help your guys survive combat, survive certain removal spells that deal damage, or cause a creature to get -X/-X. 4 copies of Groundswell. Talked about it a little bit earlier. Very good with the Quirion Ranger. Very nice on a creature like Ledgewalker, Pit Skulk, or anything with Rancor, because that damage is oftentimes just getting in and you cause a lot of terrible, terrible damage, as some would say. 3 copies of Hunger of the Howl Pack. Definitely want to be casting this for the Morbid, but you can also put a 1/1 counter on a Ledgewalker to avoid sweepers from killing it, things like that. But the main combo here is putting 3+1/+1 counters on either a Pit Skulk or a Ledgewalker or even a Young Wolf or I guess it would be better on a Safehold Elite, wouldn't it, than it would on a Young Wolf, because the Undying won't trigger if you do put a Hunger on the Wolf. So keep that in mind. A little bit of a corner case, but good to know about. Vines of Vastwood, one of the best pump spells, because it also protects a creature, gives it hexproof essentially, and +4/+4, which is a great deal. A lot of times you can blank a removal spell and deal extra damage on top of that. So a very nice trick, and pretty much very strong in this deck as well as Infect. It's also just a killer there. And then Rancor, the best aura in the format, I would argue, but I mean, you could make arguments for Ethereal Armor or Armadillo Cloak, among others. This one is just great. Just going to keep coming back to our hand, gives creatures trample, so it's sort of like a burn spell in a sense, because it forces through damage and generates card advantage, which is really fantastic. So that's the main deck. You will see some other cards being played in various main decks, from Bone Splitter to Wild Mongrel to Basking Rootwalla. Some people will main deck sideboard-ish cards like Scattershot Archer. But this is what we're running with now. I liked that this was pretty streamlined. We've got some 3-ofs in Gather Courage and Howl Pack, because we'd like to see one typically in a game, but these are not as good in multiples as the Rancors are. And then we've got the 3 of Safehold Elite because of the high mana curve, and then this because it's very situational. Everything else is a 4 of, so that's pretty straightforward there, I think. So our sideboard's not as great as maybe some of the more tuned lists, but I wanted something kind of general that we can mess around with and perhaps tweak from here in the future. So 3 copies of Fog could probably be Spore Frog if you wanted to. I prefer that this is more of a surprise, it's more of a trick. Even though the Spore Frog can get in for some damage, it's a little too telegraphed. I'm not saying that Fog is strictly better, but I just think I prefer Fog over Spore Frog. Now this will help us in mirror matches, any close races, against Infect, against Hexproof. It's possible that we don't need 3 copies in the board. It might be overkill. 3 copies of Gleeful Sabotage. Against Affinity, there's a lot of problematic creatures, big creatures. There's Spire Golems in the format, Serrated Arrows in the format. So this is nice to have around. Green removal spell, you don't see that every day. This also hits enchantments, so that can be relevant against certain decks. 3 copies of Hornet Sting. Want to be able to have some removal in green, which is very helpful. Delver of Secrets is a mainstay of the format, and any deck playing Standard Bearer can really affect this deck in a negative way. So that's a very strong case for Hornet Sting being in the deck. 1 copy of Serene Heart, maybe a little outdated at this point, but it is for Hexproof in particular, just having a trump that can take out all of their momentum at a given point. Just a 1 of, because it is a very narrow sideboard card but can do a lot of damage. 4 copies of Thermokarst. I'm not sure how effective this is in Stompy, but we have been seeing lists playing this, and it will be to combat a lot of the Fisher Post decks, the other Temporal Fisher decks that either enchant a land or play bounce lands, and also various flavors of Cloud Post. So we will try this out, see how it works. And lastly, a copy of Viridian Longbow. You could consider this the fourth Hornet Sting, but it stakes around and it gets around Standard Bearer. Very nice to just get card advantage, cut down a couple fairies or Phantasmal Bear. Do what you will. Also messes with combat math a little bit. So you swing your 2/2 into a 1/3 or something like that, and then you can shoot it with the longbow. You know, corner cases like that. So this is the deck, a little bit untuned, a little sketchy, but I think it's a decent enough list to take into battle and see how it does. So once again, I really appreciate you watching this video. Please check out the rest of the article, check out the videos, and leave some comments and let me know what you think. I'd really appreciate the feedback, and we will talk to you guys later for the matches.